Welcome to Surviving Ish podcast. Today's going to be a little different. We've got Dr. Cox with us, who has been a guest on the podcast before, but that episode hasn't come out yet, and that one's a little bit more lighthearted. But this one is something that she reached out to me and wanted to discuss. And of course, I'm very passionate about it, as you all know, with where we are in today's America. So, Dr. Cox, my friend, thank you for being here. I know this is going to be a little different than what we have been doing on the platform,
Yeah.
but I feel like it's so important, and I'm looking forward to having this conversation with you because you're going to give us a little bit more of a psychological background on what could play and factor with this, right?
That's usually my focus. I mean, I went into psychiatry because I needed to understand what makes human beings tick.
Yeah,
I I wanted to help people, obviously,
yeah,
but in order to help them, in order you identify a problem, but then you need to understand what it is before you can help them.
yeah,
And so that's always my focus is when I look at these behaviors that are so outside of the normal realm of human behavior and human experience, the question arises, why? Why is this person like this?
So I'm here at the protest in Temecula. We are at the duck pond, and it is amazing how many people turn out in this little red town in this red part of California. This is what it's all about, folks. We have to come together. We have to come together, and this makes me cry with joy and also with the grief of the loss of Renee Good. That's what we're here. That's why we're here.
we're going to be talking about the Sasha Riley audios that have been released in regards to Epstein files, Donald Trump, a list of people that we assumed or had been told that was in there, but this is some pretty hard stuff. So trigger warning with all that. But where should we start, Dr. Cox? I listened to, I think, 3 hours of coverage, and it was hard.
Yeah, it's very hard. Well, I think for people who don't know what this is, haven't heard, in case folks are just, busy with their lives and or have heard about it, but maybe can't stomach it,
Yeah.
which is totally understandable. And I would recommend to anyone before they delve into this to really check in with yourself and make sure that you're able to self-regulate and cope with what you're about to hear. If you have been a victim of sexual abuse, if you've and that includes witnessing. It doesn't mean that you have to have been the actual target. Then you might want to check in with yourself, with your therapist, with your family, friends, people who know and love you, and ask them, do you think this is something that I can, you know me, do you think this is something that I can really listen to? And so I want to give that trigger warning to people who are going to be listening today because we will be delving into a lot of this. So if you're not capable of listening to this, or if you need to figure out if you are first, please do so. So Sasha Riley is William Sasha Riley, which is not his original name, I don't believe. He's an Iraqi war vet, Afghanistan. I think he spent 20 years in the military and in combat zones. Has given an interview to a woman named Lisa. Oh, I'm gonna space her name here. Lisa Volding, Lisa Noel Voldeng, Voldeng. She resides in Canada, and she is an investigative journalist. And Sasha is now an adult, of course, but between the ages of 9 and 13, he was trafficked in the Jeffrey Epstein child sex ring. And his memories are from age 9 to 13, but he's not certain if it may have begun before that. And the things that he recalls that happened to him and that he witnessed are horrific to the degree, even going as far as child snuff films. And if you don't know what a snuff film is, that is a pornographic film wherein the victim is in real life murdered at the end of the film.
Yeah, and sometimes with an audience,
Yeah, yes.
and this is one of those things where it's like where do you start? And I to kind of piggyback off of what you were saying with your trigger warning is, what I have always done, especially when I dive into, true crime cases like this, anything that could be triggering to me, due to what has happened to me, I always have a comfort place set up and ready, right? So when I have to take my break, I have that person I can call. We've already got it planned that I'm going to call them. I've got like my hot tea if that's what I want. I've got my grounding place. Today
Mhm.
is freezing. Usually like to sit outside on my porch swing. It's freezing. Not doing that today, but I have
Mhm.
those things in place. And so I just wanted to piggyback on that, so that way if the listener needs to pause and get a plan ready, because
Right,
we're kind of going to dive into this.
right.
But what really stood out to me is how much was remembered, and the things that this kid saw is something that I most of us, thank goodness, would never could ever even imagine.
You can't imagine it. Yeah, that he not only saw but endured and
Yeah,
was subjected to.
yeah, yeah,
And he named some very, very high profile people,
yep,
including the one sitting in the Oval Office as we speak
yeah, and a lot of people that are still in the
in
public
Congress
eye in Congress, just right under him,
and the Supreme Court.
yeah. Yeah, and as of today, the recording, we're doing it what, January 17th.
Mhm.
So apparently Friday, so midnight last Friday night slash Saturday morning, they put a bill in saying that the courts can't force the Epstein files to be released. And
Mhm.
they did that thinking that we were all tucked in bed nicely,
Right.
that they could slide it just under without us knowing. But luckily, there's some really cool, really good reporters out there. Um, for someone to be innocent, he's working really hard at hiding.
Yeah, they all are.
Yeah.
They're all very complicit. And not just complicit, I think some of them are involved at higher levels than just being complicit. And I think when we look at the chronologic, the series of events that most people are familiar now with leading up to Jeffrey Epstein's arrest initially in Florida, when Pam Bondi was the AG of Florida, um, and he got that sweetheart deal with the help of Roy Black, who comes up in this story more than once. He comes up. Roy Black is a prosecutor. No, I'm sorry. He's not a public, he's a private defender. He's an attorney who defends and has defended many very big name people who've been accused of various crimes.
Yeah.
And before the publishing of this Sasha Riley interview, Roy Black turned up dead. But as I was saying, when you look at the chronological events leading up to Epstein's arrest in 2008 in Florida, wherein the now I'm forgetting the name of the man who was his who was the prosecutor in Florida, who ended up on Trump's cabinet in his first term.
I'm gonna look that up real quick.
That would have been Acosta,
Mm,
Alex Acosta. He ended up on the cabinet of Trump's his first term. Alex Acosta was a part of giving Epstein that sweetheart deal, wherein Epstein was basically put on. He had to report to the jail 12 hours beginning in the evening and ending in the morning, and then he could be out 12 hours for work. And he just proceeded to do what he'd always done. And then now look who's the AG of the United States. Pam Bondi had all of that information back then, and she did not, she sort of suppressed it. She didn't carry through with it. You know, we're talking about people at very high levels of authority and fame in the United States and likely in the world. I mean, we do know about, Prince Andrew, well, the former Prince Andrew, Andrew now.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, Sasha talks about, so Sasha was adopted out of the foster system by a man named William Riley. William Riley was a pilot who piloted Epstein's planes. And Riley adopted Sasha for the purpose of selling him in these situations, prostituting him and taking him to these parties where he would be raped by grown men and beaten and abused. Some of these men showed up at these parties just wanting to beat a kid.
Yeah.
They weren't even showing up to have sex with a kid.
Yeah. There was one story, and I'm horrible with names, but so okay, well actually no, because I don't want to get too far ahead, but what I found very interesting is Sasha had witnessed and was in sexual situations, non-consensual sexual situations
Right.
as this child, where another little girl was executed in front of him.
Mhm.
And, so of course he witnessed that.
There were two, actually.
There was two. What I found very interesting is he had mentioned how, like, why wasn't he ever killed? Is what was going through my mind. And then he was talking about how he remembered, I think, three different times that there was situations that was attempted, such as a drowning situation, but there was a
There
fisherman.
were four
Oh, was it
times.
four? Okay.
Hmm.
And then how there was a time where was it his father that pushed him down a flight of stairs? And
Yeah, it was his parents every time that they were the ones trying to kill him
yeah,
every time. Aside from the episode he talks about with Congressman Andy Biggs. But going back to his parents, there were three CPS reports made in three different states. I believe it was Texas, Alabama, and I want to say Florida, maybe?
yeah. I remember Tennessee being involved, but I don't.
Tennessee, yeah, Texas, Tennessee, and Alabama.
Okay, yeah.
And then there was a fourth episode in Florida where they tried to kill him. You know, they were situations such as in one episode, and I don't remember if it might have been the Alabama coast or it might have been Florida, where his parents took him to a part of the beach that was specifically marked as you shouldn't be here because there's a riptide.
Hmm.
And they encouraged him to go play in the water in the riptide. And the riptide took him out. He was able to get caught on a rock and sort of climb up on that rock, and he was screaming for help. And his parents were just standing on the beach, and some guy from down the beach
Yeah.
came and went out and rescued him, and then cursed out his father and said, "I know you, SOB. I could hear him. I know you heard him." So there were three reports made.
Yeah. Well, and even
Um,
the cop that came to the scene and was questioning him asked if he could swim, asked Riley,
right.
Sasha if he could swim. He was like, no.
I can't swim. And they knew he couldn't swim.
Exactly. So,
Right.
do you think that he was not part of these snuff films or murdered via gunshot because of him being adopted? Because
I,
there is actual court records of him as a person versus if it was just a runaway. Do you know why that would?
why he wasn't,
Yeah,
wasn't taken? The only guess I have is because his father was the pilot who flew these girls around, these kids around, girls and boys, and flew around the clients and knew and was at the parties and had witnessed everything. And possibly, maybe, that's why he wasn't taken out, was that his father had that position with those people. However, his father felt very cowed by them as well.
yeah,
So that it's kind of hard to say why they didn't, other than, as the story is entitled, Don't Worry, Boys Are Hard to Find.
yeah. I just couldn't wrap my mind around because it seemed that if they wanted him dead, he could be dead. I mean, it would just take a gunshot to the
Absolutely.
and
Sure.
and
Yeah.
and so many of these accidents, quote unquote, drowning,
Mm.
being pushed down the flight of stairs,
Right.
those could be deemed as accidents,
Accidents. Right.
and they were all in the hands of his parents because his mother was involved in this too. I know
His,
that they talk about his dad more, but his mom was just as involved.
well, he actually identifies his mother as being more monstrous than his father.
Yeah,
That between the two of them, if either of them had any sort of little grain of compassion, it was his father.
yeah,
But I think Sacha maybe, as most victims do when it comes to their abusers, what their abusers will do is they will give them just enough compassion or little bits of kindness to make them think that to make them hold on to the hope that this person actually cares about me and will protect me.
yeah,
And that keeps that person hooked in. And of course, it's a child. I mean, he needs to believe that somebody is there for him. Children need that. They need that. And you'll see it if you've been ever involved in any child protective services cases and watch these kids, in cases of horrific abuse by their parents, they will cry for their parents.
yeah.
I mean, children bond to their parents. And this is called trauma bonding, of course. In these, I mean, that kind of bonding is trauma bonding.
Yeah.
Um,
Is this also considered Stockholm syndrome?
No,
Okay.
no.
Okay.
Stockholm syndrome is sort of like it's the classic case is the Patricia Hearst case where she was kidnapped by the Symbionese Liberation Army and she became a fighter for them. She was out there carrying guns and wearing their beret, and they convinced her that they were the good guys, and she took up arms for them.
Okay. Okay. I just want to make sure I was following with the correct terminology.
Hmm.
I'd also found it interesting how, we had mentioned Andy Biggs and his role, and he had a role with Sasha. And
Yes.
I recall one time that there wasn't sexual assault, rape involved. It was simply him beating. And Sasha's father was like,
You have to
you,
stop. You're
you
going to
can't,
kill him.
yeah, you can't go this far. And allegedly, Andy Biggs was saying, well, you told me I could do whatever I wanted. And he was like, yeah, but you
Mhm.
can't kill him. And uh, I just,
Right.
and these
And
conversations,
I'm sorry, do you remember what led up to that beating? What Sacha had done?
no.
Okay, well, you want to get into the whole dear leader story?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So the leader of the free world, this was back before he was the leader of the free world, was involved in all of this. In fact, Sasha's recall, he alleges that it appeared to him, to his child's eye, that Trump was actually the one in charge and Epstein was more like the manager
Yeah.
of the whole operation. And what led up to that beating was when Sasha was 13, they went to one of these parties where very, very powerful people would show up. And there were children there, and those people were showing up to do things to these children. And Sasha's father, Sasha assumed that he was, this was another party where he was going to have to comply. And Sasha's dad said, "No, no, you're an adult now." He was 13.
Yeah.
You and Patricia, this other little girl, 13 years old, you guys go have fun. Well, fun to these kids, they didn't know what play was really. So they ran off together to one of the rooms to have sex with one another. She said she wanted to have sex with him because she knew that he wouldn't hurt her,
Yeah.
that Sasha wouldn't hurt her.
So they knew that they were supposed to have sex, whether they wanted
Well,
to or not.
no, she wanted to. They were free to go do what they wanted to do, but imagine that this is all you've known is someone raping you. And so now you've been sexualized far too young. And here's this boy that seems kind to you. Well, you want to experience that in a kind way, and she knew he would
Right.
be kind to her. So they went off and she said, "I want to have sex with you in a room in this house." And they did. They were in the process of that when six big guys burst into the room. And he says he doesn't remember who they were other than they just look like your good old boy. I'm going to use a phrase that we used to use in southern Missouri, big-eared, red-bearded gun bellies, big bellies. Underneath
Yeah.
there's a gun. And they proceeded to rape and torture Patricia specifically. Shot her in the chest. She didn't die. She looked at Sasha and she said, she looked at them and she said, "Just kill me, please kill me." She just wanted to be out of her misery. And she was pretty badly injured already. And Sasha looked at her and he said, "It's okay, baby, you're going to come be with me." And he said, "You just look at me. Just look at me. I love you." And they shot her in the head. And after that, Trump came into the room.
Yeah.
And that's when, but they said to him, "Look, before Trump came in, they said, look, there's going to be an old boy come in here and you're going to have to do anything he asks you to do, or the same thing's going to happen to you."
Yeah.
So that was a setup to terrify Sasha into complying because Sasha was 13 and he was already, you can imagine the amount of rage that would exist in you having experienced all those things. And he was a fighter. They knew he would fight. Although Trump, is over 6 foot tall and much bigger than him, they didn't want Sasha to put up a fight. So Trump came in and he describes him laying down in the bed saying, "I want you to have sex with me." He laid down on his stomach. And that's when Sasha looked around and saw a tent pole. He describes this now. This is allegedly. He alleges that this was Trump. He alleges that he found a tent pole in the room. He put a condom on it and he basically kicked it into Trump's back end. and severely injured him. In fact, so badly that he had to be life flighted out.
Yeah.
And that is what led then to the next time his father had to take him to one of these places, and Andy Biggs, amongst many others, beating Sascha to within an inch of his life.
Yeah. And of course, I did remember that story. I thought that was the story you were referring to, but I was afraid that maybe there was something I had missed as far as it leading to Biggs getting his
Yeah.
revenge or whatever out on Sasha.
Well, and I would say that it's not just revenge. I mean, these people are not, they're there because, for to put it in the vernacular, they're getting their rocks off on the cruelty, which, is another discussion about what's going on in our nation now and why.
Yeah, I said revenge, and I just meant, frustrating his frustration because of what happened to, his buddy Donald. Um, but yeah, I mean, but it's one of these things where it's like I'll say something, and then I think back of the word that I just used, and I'm like, my God, like I cannot wrap my mind around this to even use the correct word. Like,
Right.
what is the correct word for the shit? You know?
Right. Yeah.
God.
Yeah. The English language fails us
Yeah.
in many ways. And,
And
and,
I'm
and
surprised that he was not killed when he retaliated against Donald and became that fighter, and did that to him.
yeah, I'm surprised he wasn't as well. I'm surprised he wasn't as well. And he admits, as in his he's an adult recalling things that happened 40 years ago,
Yeah,
30 to 40 years ago. And remember that, I mean, we all know, or most of us know, that severe trauma causes dissociation. And that
right.
oftentimes causes, there's either a vivid memory, sight, sound, smell, taste, all of it, of the event, or there you've dissociated and your memory gets blurry,
Yeah,
and it's not entirely clear what happened. And he said that he didn't know who the Trump was Trump at the time.
right.
He just knew that he had seen this man before. He'd had interactions with him before, and he knew that he was a monster.
Mhm.
And he thought this man, he said, I'm going to kill this son of a bitch,
Yeah.
because he knew that he was monstrous. But
Well,
he
and he had
didn't
even
know.
said that, where he had witnessed, was it Patricia that was just murdered in front of him?
Mhm. Mhm.
And I mean, to the point that they had to, like, he was saying how the 6 men that were in there started fighting because they did it on the bed, which means they had to go get a new mattress.
Right.
And all this was just something that it's like spilling, like if we spilled a soda on the bed is how they're
Yeah.
having this kind of conversation. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like
Yeah.
it's just,
It's so calloused. It's
yeah,
so completely void of any feeling.
yeah,
But he didn't realize that was Donald Trump
right.
until years later, when he saw Donald Trump on Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous.
Hmm.
And he said, "Oh my God, I know that man,
Hmm.
that guy." But even before this episode involving Patricia's death, he'd had interactions with Trump where he alleges Trump, prior to assaulting him, would kill a litter of puppies one by one in
Yeah.
horrific ways. He'd kill a puppy, like, by some awful way, and then look over at Sasha to see his reaction.
Well, and what I remember too with this story, well, if I remember correctly, is Sasha was saying how um, allegedly Donald came there wanting to kill and torture, and they were like, "No, this is not that kind of party." And then they're like, "Well, okay, if you want it that bad, we have a litter of puppies that we got to get rid of anyways."
Yeah, and he'd
But
go do that.
and so he went and did each puppy horrifically,
Right.
like it, which I get so disgusted with that story by Christy Nome talking about in her book how she executed her dog in front of her children or children's dog or whatever it was. And it's
It
like
was there was a puppy.
the family dog or something.
Yes. So now we know why Trump likes her so
I
much.
was gonna say, like we're finding all of these
It's connections, these things
connections.
that it's like you could just start it on a whiteboard like you see on a crime show and
Yeah.
start putting the pins and the strings, connecting everything together. And she not only killed the puppy, but she shot the goat. She killed
Yeah.
the goat.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. So no wonder he was like, okay, I kind of like this woman. But something
mhm,
else that I think that is important to mention as far as, Sasha Riley and where his mind was at such as I mean, a baby. He's still a kid. But he was like, if regardless, they're going to kill me and I'm going to go down with the fight. I'm taking him with me.
mhm,
And to even think of anyone thinking that. We've heard of women being that has saved themselves from an abuser and thought, you know what, you're going to kill me anyway, so I'm going to
right.
go down with the fight. But this is a
Mhm.
kid. Like I have
The child. Mhm.
nephews his age that
Right.
I, I just can't. It breaks my heart.
Yeah, it's really, and I've told this story on TikTok for a long time. I just knew, how you just know something. You don't have proof of it. Nobody's come out with anything about it. You just know it. I knew that this whole Epstein situation involved child snuff films because 20 years ago, I was in practice in a different state than where I live now. And a woman came into the hospital trying very hard not to kill herself. She had been diagnosed with DID, dissociative identity disorder, due to her childhood. And I began working with her. And her story was that she was born into a child sex trafficking ring, much like Sascha, who was not born into it, but he was adopted into it. She thought she might have been born in Israel. That was her best guess. But the family moved a lot and ended up in California. And she was forced to witness these films. And she was also sexually abused. And her mother was extremely, extremely sadistic. And as I would listen to her stories, even as a psychiatrist, even knowing and having worked in forensic units and what have you, it was so fantastic to me that I kept thinking, and I think it was my own psyche trying to protect me. I kept thinking, this is a delusion. She was severely abused, and she's made up this story. And she had a sketchbook. When she didn't have words to tell you what happened to her, she would sketch it out. And in one of her sketches, it was a child hanging from a ceiling by all fours, belly down. And someone who looked like a lot like the Grim Reaper, the hooded robe with a scythe cutting the belly of this child. And she said, "That's me and that's my mom." And I I can't remember what I said to her, but it was something along the lines of, "So that's how your psyche constructs it for you." And she said, "No, that's what happened to me." And she pulled her shirt up to show me the scars. What had happened was at the age of 15, she escaped somehow. Prior to that, she had been living her life in underground bunkers that they would put these children in. They would abduct these children, keep them in underground bunkers until it was time for their final film. And she was made to live with them because she said her mother told her, "You have enough light in you to keep them alive, and we need them to stay alive." So she was in charge of keeping them alive. And when she escaped at the age of 15, she was taken into state custody and then placed in a relative adopted her. And she could tell that I was having a hard time really understanding that her story was true. We weren't in California at the time. I'm just going to say that. And the next time she came in, this relative that adopted her came in and showed me the paperwork from the FBI that had placed her in the witness protection program. And she vouched for her. And that's when my world sort of, the veils came off of my eyes. And I wanted to put my child in a plexiglass, lock my child in a plexiglass bubble.
Right.
But she said to me, "You need to be careful because they're here. They're here too." And this was a rural area in a Northwest state. And so ever since that 20 years ago, and then this came out about the Jeffrey Epstein files, I knew, I had a feeling we are going to learn the
Yeah.
worst. And what Sasha Riley talks about is that for a while he was housed in a brothel with a lot of other kids. He said he thought there were maybe 10 or 13 other children there. Most of them, almost all of them were girls, because as the title says, boys are hard to find. And he talks about these girls being taken to these parties where these high profile people would show up to do things, and about 50% of them wouldn't come back. And he believes, they would tell the other kids at the brothel, "Oh, she was taken to live in a mansion with this rich guy, and she's gonna, like he's gonna take care of her." The truth is probably not that.
Yeah. Yeah. To piggyback off what you were saying, when I saw how, when we saw how people would not believe victims, what is it, 23, 26 women that,
Right,
have
right.
publicly
Mm-hmm.
accused
Stepped up. Yep.
Donald Trump, and how that didn't steer very many people away from defending him. I knew that it had to be worse than just child trafficking
Mhm.
because MAGA doesn't care about that.
No, apparently they
So we
don't.
knew it had to be
The
worse.
the party of Protect the Children is the
Yeah.
opposite. That's another interesting psychological curiosity, if you will, that it's called reaction formation, meaning that, for instance, the best examples are the evangelical preachers who have, screamed and yelled about the sin of extramarital sex and homosexuality, and then they've been caught,
Yeah.
right, in the hotel room with a homosexual prostitute,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and even though they're married, right?
Right.
So it's that I'm going to scream and yell the opposite of what I actually do, to protect my own psyche. I'm going to tell myself and the world that I'm against this
Yeah.
while I'm doing it.
Yeah. I can't think of a single day that I've not opened up social media and there's a new MAGA claimed person that isn't going to prison or pleading guilty or being arrested for
Hmm.
child pornography, for
Right.
sexual assault, and so I knew that if if what we already know wasn't deal breakers,
Mm-hmm.
then Donald was working so hard to hide what else was
Mm-hmm.
in there. It had to be extremely, extremely bad.
Right.
And even was this, so he had recently made a comment that was released on audio saying that something about the Epstein files can't be released because a lot of his friends will get in trouble or something like that.
Right.
Was
Yeah.
that when this came out, when the Sasha Riley case audio came
No, I
out? Is
think it
that
was before that. I think it was
okay?
before that. Yeah.
And you know what else I find very interesting that I think is kind of important to point out is Donald Trump loves to sue people.
Yes,
And
he
none
does.
of these
Mhm.
people that have accused him of sexual assault, like he's not
Mhm.
suing any of
Mhm.
them.
Right.
There's no defamation for any of them. And he's got like hundreds, I think it is, of lawsuits that are still open right now. If
Mhm.
and I could be wrong with that, don't quote me on that. And none of them are about any of these sexual assaults. Like
No.
those would be the ones that you think that would if you were innocent,
But if he does that, there's discovery.
there's discovery.
There's going to
Yep.
be all sorts of discovery. There are going to be cell phone records, there are going
Yep.
to be flight records, there are going to be all sorts of records that they will have to produce. And
Exactly.
he knows that. Along the lines of who commits these crimes, you may be familiar with a website called whoismakingnews.com.
Mm.
So it's a website that was created by a transgender woman who is an attorney. Back when, the big boogeyman, and it still is, or the transgender people, that they're the ones that are the pedophiles. They're the ones that are going to get your children. So she kept track of databases all over the country when it was available. These databases are disappearing, by the way.
Of course.
But the cases in the databases run from February 10th, 2023 to May 23rd, 2024 of child sex crimes. And out of, let's see, the total number is
This says the number of individuals in the database exceed 10,000 cases. Is
um,
that the number you were looking for?
no, there's 4,205 cases do not have any employment or relationship included in the news reports. And she's looking at
Okay.
employment, relationship to the victim, religious affiliation, gender identification. And I want to say it's a little over 1,000 that she ends up bringing into the study. Out of those, 846 were religiously employed with churches, either pastors, youth pastors, that sort of thing. One was a drag queen. Five were transgender.
But of course, out of the almost 850 people, plus then there's five transgender, one drag queen. The enemy, and the only six that would be looked at are the transgender and
Right,
drag queen.
right.
The-
Yeah, total offenders 10,885. She says one drag queen, five transgender, 846 religiously affiliated or employed, 89 politicians, 301 police officers, 807 were family members, 1,088 were family affiliated. And of the states in the United States that have the highest per capita child sex crimes, it looks as if North and South Dakota, Idaho, Wyoming, Utah, New Mexico, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Iowa, Louisiana, Texas, Indiana, Kentucky, West Virginia, New Hampshire, looks like Vermont, New Hampshire, no, Pennsylvania, New Hampshire, Vermont, Maine, Texas, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Florida. What do most of those states have in common?
Red.
Very.
And did you know there was a study, and I don't have it in front of me, but like Oklahoma is the number one like trans porn viewed, and they're like the reddest, the lowest of, and they're the one that's anti everything,
Yeah.
you know,
Yes, yes.
and it never,
And
I mean
that's
that,
and that's that, needing to defend against your own internal monsters. Got to go to church and tell everybody how righteous you are,
yep,
and how against all of the things that, these things that you oppose while you're doing them
yeah,
behind closed doors. And that, in my opinion, just as a psychiatrist and understanding the psychology involved in it, religious, how should I say, extreme religion leads to this sort of repressed sexuality. Sometimes it's just suppressed. The difference between repression and suppression is an unconscious pushing down of so you're not even aware that you have that thought. Suppression is you're conscious of it, you push it away.
hmm
But I think extreme religion affiliation and belief leads to this kind of sexual repression and suppression that then we see within those groups a, a ton of incest.
yeah,
I mean, if you think about the reports coming out of the LDS Church, for instance, it's pretty
yep,
horrific.
yeah. Well, I mean, even that
Mhm.
chart that we were looking at, 807 out of the 10,855 total offenders, 807 of them were family members.
Yeah. It's more often, yeah, a family member than not.
Hmm.
Mm. Or a
Yep.
person in a position of power. So positions of power over children, churches, schools, law enforcement, parents, older family members. Those are the ones.
Yeah, this chart shows for, it says total offenders by category, like family member and friends of family, and like there's like the pastors, the church members. Wow.
Yeah. So then, of course, that leads us to the questions of why do some people do this and other people don't? Okay, so there's the where it's that nature versus nurture sort of
Mhm.
idea. So the nurture piece of it we're discussing, how are you brought up? Are you brought up in a family that tells you that you must do what authority tells you to do, that you must follow what authority tells you to do, whether it's your church, your law enforcement, your teachers, whatever. And then there's the nurture piece of it. I mean, I'm sorry, then there's the nature piece of it. So in the nature piece of it, there have been some studies, lots of studies actually, on the most studyable population, which are those which are already locked up and they're sort of a captive study population. They can't opt out.
Yeah.
They don't have to sign up. And there was a book written years ago by a psychologist named Robert Hare, Hare. I think I may have recommended that book to you at one time.
Yeah.
And it's entitled Without Conscience. He spent his entire career as a psychologist studying the prison population and doing MRIs of their brains and doing interviews with them and that sort of thing. And everything that he came up with was very interesting. He did note a lot of differences in the way they speak, their language patterns, their mannerisms, and even some differences in their MRIs, although very slight, because that was in the days prior to the more targeted MRIs, like functional MRI and PET scans, even. And it's interesting because at the end of his book, and I think we understand more about it now, so we don't have to go quite so far into the potential woo-woo area, but at the end of his book, he said, despite all of these years of study and everything, all of these patterns that I found, the thing that remains unanswered is what is missing in these people that isn't in people who do have a conscience. And he suggested there's soul. But since then, we've had a lot of studies with a lot of more sophisticated techniques, including functional MRI, which looks at the connectivity areas between the brain regions. And we know, for instance, and I think many people may know this if you've studied, true crime like you have, that there are they have under-functioning prefrontal cortex areas. And that's the prefrontal cortex is where emotion is filtered through and regulated. There are connections with the limbic system and the anterior cingulate gyrus and other areas in the brain where the prefrontal cortex says, yeah, you want to do that, but you shouldn't. And keeps you from acting on whatever it is.
So is that, forgive me, but I just want to make sure I understand. Is that like if someone sees an attractive person and then they find out that person is just like 17 or 18, they're like, oh, okay, never mind, that's off limits.
Right,
So that's one of those things, right?
right,
Okay, okay.
right. So there are tracks in the brain that connect, for instance, the amygdala to the cortex. And the amygdala is many people have heard of it by now. It's this little P-shaped area in the midbrain, kind of, behind your ear, right there. That is the area that senses and processes danger, fear, anger primarily. It's the part of the reptilian brain that we needed and we do still need to keep us safe, to sense danger in our environment. And then that is connected to the prefrontal cortex by the anterior cingulate gyrus, which is it's like a little horn, and it goes up, and there are connections that go to the prefrontal cortex. What they found is that folks who tend to be rigid in their thinking, fear driven, fear motivated, tend to have larger amygdala. So their amygdala are sort of hyper functioning in many ways, and less developed anterior cingulate gyrus. The anterior cingulate gyrus is sort of where your understanding of nuance resides. So, okay, has sensed danger in the environment. That gets sent to the prefrontal cortex through the amygdala, which is going, okay, let's filter this out. Okay, that's not as important. Wait a minute, there's this. And then the prefrontal cortex says, okay, this is how we're going to act on this. And it's interesting because studies on people who are more liberal in their politics, people who, liberals, as we know, are kind of they're a lot more maybe warm and fuzzy. They want to take care of people. They want to make sure there are social safety nets for people. They want to make sure that
They have health care.
their neighbors, yeah, healthcare, food, housing, the basic kind of things and they're more likely to be the ones out, operating the food banks and what have you. Their anterior cingulate gyrus is going to be better functioning. It's going to have more volume to it. It's going to have more blood supply. And their amygdala are smaller. So they're not as fear driven. If you are fear driven, what do you need to keep you safe? You need authority in your life. You need to know that somebody's going to, for instance, get those immigrants out because I'm afraid of them. And get them out at all costs because I'm afraid. You're going to go along with whatever authority tells you I can keep you safe because you're fear driven.
So can the cortex and amygdalas, can they change throughout? Like it's not something that you're necessarily just born with it being one particular size and it's inherited in some kind of way. Like, can it change per trauma, per,
The brain is plastic. What I mean by that is that there's always neuroplasticity. Many of these people were incubated in wombs that were bathed in the mother's cortisol levels because she was living under duress and fear, and that's how their brains developed. If their environment is such that they're taught, as I grew up with parents who told me to question authority. I mean, from the time I was little, I was kind of a handful in school because my dad told me to question authority.
right?
you know, and they taught me to be kind to other people, and they taught me all these things, don't be a bigot. No, this is we're gonna take care of our neighbors. I watched them do that. I watched them take care of people. And even though my dad was very abusive at home, that was because he had untreated bipolar disorder. And so I may have been bathed in the same sort of uterus as some of these folks who are very rigid in their thinking. But when I got into the world, I was taught something different.
Yeah.
And I was encouraged to think for myself. These people they're not encouraged to think. And think about those who grow up in the Bible Belt, as I did, in evangelical religions that teach you do not think for yourself. You have to follow what the preacher tells you, what the Bible tells you, and we're the righteous ones, and these other people are not.
Yeah.
So a lot of anger can come, a lot of pent up anger can come out of that, I think. But what I'm trying to get at is that I think these monsters that go to these kind of parties enjoy doing these kind of things have brains that are quite different than yours and mine.
Yeah.
Does that mean we give them a pass?
Oh, no, hell no.
No, it means that they shouldn't be, at the very least, they shouldn't be running the country.
At the least. What do you think? Money and power. I mean, I know that we know of middle class or lower class people that have done sorts of the same thing, maybe on a different, smaller scale because of their financial resources or lack thereof. But,
Mhm.
it's just when you get someone with a lot of power and a lot of money, I mean, when I don't even know how to ask this question, right? But like, is
Mhm.
there, do you see like a connection in the types of things like this, like trafficking with someone in high power and money, like, and I
Well,
wonder, no,
go
please,
ahead.
no, go ahead and answer that question because I don't even know if I'm asking correctly.
Well, I mean, there are, as Lisa, the interviewer points out to Sasha, Sasha's only experience of rich and powerful people is
Right,
this darkness. And Lisa points out to him that, there are rich and powerful people who are not like this,
right.
I mean, we can think of a few, such as, was it Jeff Bezos' ex-wife that
The ex-wife, yeah. I don't think
gave away a
him, but I
lot of
think the
money.
ex-wife,
Yeah,
yeah.
she's like giving away her money to try to help people. But I think there is something about that kind of wealth, and that kind of what comes along with wealth is a ton of power. And I think people can get sort of drunk on that. And of course, then when you're wealthy like that, you are affiliating with people who are wealthy and powerful. And so the opportunities for these kind of dark things are probably more within your grasp.
Yeah.
If you have that kind of if you have that kind of predilection, you're more likely to be able to act on it.
I would also like to ask you this, and if we need to put a pin in this question, let's absolutely please do. But before Donald Trump was allegedly elected as the winner and the
Mhm.
president, whole other podcast
Mhm.
and conversation. But
Yes.
I thought, there when you look at the rates of people who have been assaulted I was like, that alone, if those people voted, they're not going to vote for him. And then, when if the numbers are correct, which right now that's all we have to go on. Do you think if these numbers are correct and Donald Trump did win by the 7 million votes or whatever it was, but do you think people are having a trauma response to him? Is there some kind of fawning for him or
You mean the ones that are
the
still
voters?
pro in his camp?
Yeah, like as far as MAGA, like because I thought all these people would who have when you look at the statistics of the amount of people that get assaulted, that they would not vote for this man just on that alone, and see that all these people are like I always wondered like are they having some kind of like trauma response to him?
I wouldn't give them that much credit.
Fair,
Um, from
fair,
what I've seen on social media, many of them are as sadistic
yeah,
and they enjoy seeing what's happening to other people.
yeah.
And they say, I voted for this. This is exactly what I voted for.
I was telling you before we hit record how there's reports of ICE coming through, the town that I live in, and
Mhm.
there were comments that I was reading that I had to turn it off because
Yeah.
people were saying, "What can I do to help? This is what I voted for." And I've even had people reach out to me, even recently, and say, I would always fuss at you for always talking politics and I just didn't get it and I voted for Trump and now I regret it. Well, fine.
Mhm.
I'm glad that you do, and I hope that you speak really up and loud, but I'm not your friend and I don't forgive you. And you're not welcome in my home because it didn't matter until it affected you. And I'm not going to wait until it affects me. I'm not going to wait until my friend gets deported and then say, okay, never mind, I'm sorry. I'm not going to
Right.
wait until my niece or my sister-in-law, dies because they've been had a
Right.
failed pregnancy of some sort. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to wait. And the people that wait, I'm glad that you are getting a wake up, but that does not mean my door is open to you.
Yeah.
It shouldn't
Yeah.
take hitting home.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying. And I think, there are two ways of thinking about that, that whatever resides, whatever lives within them that caused them to see his behavior in his first term and vote for him again while um, hearing about what was contained in Project 2025, um, while hearing about all of the plans for this mass deportation, and they decided to vote for him again. It is very hard to say, okay, I forgive you, let's, you come into our circle now, and it's very hard.
Yeah.
But I have had conversations with people that, sort of once that crack forms in the wall, then there's a greater chance that some light can get through and you can wedge that crack open farther and farther by introducing them to ideas about this and that and this and that. And what about this? Have you thought about that? And then pretty soon, I mean, I tell this story. I tell the story about having gone to a city council meeting. This was before January 6th, the famous January 6th, infamous, I should say.
Mhm.
And our city there's some very conservative, religious city council members, one in particular, who was bound and determined to take Pride Month off of the list of city proclamations. Like, this city is not going to celebrate Pride Month. And I went there to speak to the city council about why I felt this was really a bad idea. And here's the message that you're giving to so many young people who already feel marginalized. And this is how you want them to feel about where they live, that they are absolutely not welcome. And there was, at the time I didn't realize it, but a future J6er there, a man that ended up going to the Capitol and got arrested, and went to prison until he was pardoned. And I suspect, maybe not real bright, but very large man. I mean, I'm telling you, this man was like 6'6" or 7". He was huge. And he was a member of the Oath Keepers. And he had his little shirt on to identify him as such. And he got up and talked about, the trans people and blah, blah, blah. But he was upset because he had gone to the city council and spoken about that before. He said that his family had been doxxed and had been receiving threatening phone calls, threatening messages on their voicemail. And he was upset that his family didn't feel safe. And he had kids, a wife and kids. And after the meeting, he was out in the lobby, and I went out in the lobby, and I walked up to him, and I looked up at him like this, And I said, and I thought, because I thought to myself, I want to connect with this man. I want to see what makes him think like this. And he's not very bright, so I think I can do that. Um, and I stuck out my hand to shake his hand, and like his hand was like up to here. My arm was
Right.
huge. Um, and I said, listen, I want to tell you that I'm really sorry that your family is fearful and is, living in fear, because my family knows what that's like. I said, I didn't tell him any specifics, but I said, I have family members who are part of the LGBTQ community, and we live in fear every day.
Yeah.
And he said, well, I have a sister who's trans, and I don't agree with the way she lives because I'm a Christian. And I said, but would you agree that she deserves to be able to live without fear? And he said, well, yeah. And I said, and would you agree that this country is a secular country? We are not one religion in this country. So your Christianity is not my religion, may not be anyone, around you. They may have other religions. And he said, well, yeah, he knew enough to say there's separation of church and state. And I said, yes, exactly. See? I said, so your family deserves to live without fear, and so does mine, and so does your sister. And I said, I bet if we sat down to coffee, we would probably have a lot in common, and maybe more than we don't. And he said, yeah, you're probably right. And then he went off and, rioted at the Capitol on
Right.
January 6th. But my point is, I do think that if we're willing to give it a try, sometimes we can widen those cracks. We can let more light shine in, you know?
Yeah, and you're giving me a lot to think about because I truly do care about some of these people that have started getting cracks, with a little
Yeah.
bit of light in. I think for me, and I don't know if this is right or if there is a right, um, but with the little bit of thinking that I have done in the past few weeks with people reaching out to me, um, is if I see that you're being consistent and loud, if you also are part of the fight and you're now not going to be like, okay, I was loud about being MAGA, but now I'm going to sit back and be quiet and because I'm non-MAGA any longer, then that's still being complicit to it. And
Yes.
and
Yes.
so I feel like if there was a way for me to not necessarily, I don't know if I want to say forgive, but if there's a way for me to reunite in some kind of way with this person, it would be for this fight because they're being just as loud.
But remember, you're not made the same way they are.
Yeah.
So these people They grew up in families that were religious and evangelical. Their pastors were very politically conservative and told them how to think and how to vote. Their families told them how to think and how to vote. And they are fear-driven brains that need to have a sense of safety. Well, their sense of safety is being a part of the herd. It's like it's almost like, if you think about wild horses, herd animals, the way a herd of wild horses punishes their adolescents that are not behaving correctly. They kick them out of the herd and they make a circle and make sure they don't get back in. And they keep them out there for a while so that they feel exposed to predators. And then they let them back in and make sure that they, behave. But these people need that sense of safety of their friends and family who have those beliefs. And if they come out and say, I no longer believe this, I think this is wrong, they're going to lose that safety net, bubble of safety that they perceive. And it's very real that they will lose it. You hear these people that I've lost family members because, I'm not MAGA, whatever, because the conspiracy theory group, the cult, which is a whole other podcast,
Right.
they are in that because that they need that sense of belonging. It's tribal thinking.
Yeah. So, what is your professional thoughts, or thoughts, I guess, on post-Trump, post-MAGA world?
Well, first and foremost, I mean, I think what I'd have to say is I hope we have one.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, there will be a post-Trump, obviously. He's not going to live forever. I have some predictions. His physical health is
Bad.
really bad. I think he has shown definite signs of stroke, maybe multiple strokes, congestive heart failure, and I'm betting on frontotemporal dementia. And that is dementia goes in a stepwise progression. So you start up here and you have a sudden plummet to hit a plateau, and you kind of go along here for a while, and then boom, you're down again. And then anybody who's lived with a relative or seen someone deteriorate with dementia, they've seen that. The scary thing about frontotemporal dementia is that it comes along with a lot of disinhibition and delusions, impulsivity. It's not the typical dementia that people think of, the Alzheimer's, I'm losing my memory. Yes,
Right.
he can't keep a thought through one sentence, much less one sentence to another. He
Right.
loses it in the middle of a sentence. This is the kind of dementia where, they start getting sort of, in the vernacular, crazier and crazier, and disinhibited and irritable and explosive and volatile and delusional. That's what we have right now at the top of our government, and people around him who are willing to do whatever he wants to do. Having said that, I hope we have midterms,
Mm.
but I think he will do anything to keep that from happening. And so, actually, we should keep in mind it's not him masterminding this stuff, it's Stephen Miller.
Yeah.
It's Stephen Miller. It's Russell Vought, who was the head of the Heritage Foundation, who authored Project 2025. Those are the people I'm really afraid of because they're smart
Yeah.
and they are evil. And if I tell you, if anything has made me believe in reincarnation, it is Stephen Miller.
Oh, wow. Do you want to tell me a little bit about that?
There's this character that was involved with Hitler named Goebbels.
Goebbels?
Yes. Even down to their appearance.
I'm looking up his. How do you spell that?
It is Goebbels, Joseph Goebbels. Look at his Wikipedia page. Look at the images of him. So he was one of the really, truly, truly evil masterminds of the Third Reich. He was the one whispering into Hitler's ear at all times.
Wow.
Stephen Miller is the one who's running this country.
Yeah.
And he nearly parrots Joseph Goebbels in his sentiments and what he says.
Well, and they keep doing these things like right in front of our face, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like there was it Christy Nome that was at a podium speaking and there was a sign on it that had a Hitler quote on it? Something
Yes.
about,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, they're not hiding it. Yeah. Uh, and Christy Nome is not smart enough probably to even know that was a Hitler quote.
oh, of course not. Of course not. But how do you think, like, I feel like JD Vance is who they're trying to get into the next presidency, but I don't feel like people really care much for him.
Well, they don't, but I don't think it matters. I think what matters is that they want to see an administration that carries out these awful things that they want to have happen. I mean, there are people who really, as I've said, who really want these terrible things to happen
Yeah.
to marginalized people. And
I
they
don't,
don't care if there's some collateral damage of US citizens
oh, of
who are
course not.
white,
Of course not.
white US citizens. They don't care.
Well, and that's why they immediately want to go to, well, it was a trans person, or it was, now this is a gay person. That's it. They want
Mhm.
to, whether it's true or not, it wasn't a trans person that shot Charlie Kirk, or, they wanted to
Oh,
go into, I don't believe those text messages that was sent
no.
allegedly from his
Yeah.
phone to
It
his
was no,
trans
it was
person. That's bullshit. So they, of course, they're having to just keep creating the enemy, and it's always the white guy
right,
somewhere,
right.
and I'm a white person.
Yeah.
But I mean but it's the truth.
Mm.
I had always kind of wondered if, and this might be a question or a thought that plays into my ignorance some, but I feel like Trump is obviously just the face. He's not smart enough to think of all these ideas. There's, like you said, there's masterminds behind him. He just
Mhm.
has the riz to
Yes,
win.
right.
Um, I had sometimes wondered if his people, who want JD in office, if they would ex kill off Donald Trump so that way JD gets put right in place of presidency.
I don't see that happening. I really
Yeah,
don't. I mean, I don't think Vance has the kind of popularity that is called for anything questionable to happen
yeah,
to Trump because his base would be extremely upset about that.
yeah,
Um, I think I think his health is going to take care of that.
yeah,
you know, and as far as a timeline, who knows? But, just the congestive heart failure alone, which I believe that's what it is. I don't for 1 minute believe that his ankles are cankles because of, venous stasis. And even just that alone, as long as it's been going on, he probably doesn't have but a few months. I mean, honestly.
yeah.
I don't know what they're doing to prop him up, but it's becoming, every time we see him, every time I feel like I see him, which I try not to, I feel like another Bernie, weekend at Bernie's.
Oh yeah,
If he saw that meeting with, I believe it was all the the business people, was that what it was in the White House? And he got up and he just wandered off to the window to look out the window at the beautiful ballroom that's being,
Mm-hmm.
and and everybody's kind of sitting there going, what the fuck is
I know.
happening?
I know. And then there was this video, and I've seen it circulating because when I first thought I was like, this has to be AI, but he stood up to make this speech and was just like moaning and groaning before he started
Yes.
talking. Was that AI?
No, it wasn't. And
Oh my God.
he was making fun of Joe Biden. He was mocking Joe Biden. But even in that context, it was so gross. It was so inappropriate. And he's the definition of unpresidential. Um, and to think about, it wasn't that long ago when the Republicans were ready to crucify Obama for wearing a tan suit. I mean, I get you right. Um, that's the baked-in racism. But I want to bring this back to understanding that we're talking about a man who is deteriorating from strokes, dementia, and congestive heart failure, who is running the country and is responsible, according to Sasha Riley, allegedly, some of the worst, most monstrous
Yeah.
torture and murder.
Yeah.
And we've already heard the story of the girl who claims that they disposed of her newborn baby off of a boat in Lake Michigan
Yeah.
because it was his.
Yep.
I mean, we don't know, there's no proof that any of this happened, but why are all of these victims coming forward?
Yeah.
Why, how can there be this many? When, if it's one person or two people or even three, okay, maybe you can question it. But this is a myriad
Yeah.
of voices speaking up.
Yeah.
And how can we ignore that?
Well, and even when you think of like the other factors around it too, right? Like all of these stories are screwed up and I mean fucked up in some
Hmm.
kind of
Hmm.
sadistic way.
Hmm.
And the people that are telling these stories are also being shut up somehow. You know,
Hmm.
like the FBI, I was reading the FBI was after Sasha Riley because of these audio recordings so bad that he's left the country.
He's gone. Yeah. Yeah, the interviewer helped him get out of the country, and we
Yeah.
don't know where he is now.
Yeah.
She's not going to give that away.
No,
And
and as she
because,
shouldn't.
right, because I mean, this isn't confined to the United States. As my patient told me, this is global.
Yeah.
So these people are everywhere.
Well, and even in this audio, uh, Sasha had mentioned something about how he felt like Putin was also involved. Was that right?
He said that
He recognized the accents.
I can't remember if he heard them talking about Putin or if Putin was present. I don't remember. I
I
don't.
I feel like I remember, and guys, to the listener, so sorry, we took in a lot of information at one time.
It
So
said, it's like what, 5 hours of recording. I mean, it was
Yeah.
just, yeah.
So, but I feel like I remember him saying that he was too young to really recognize what type of accent it was. He just knew it was an accent and that it
Hmm.
was a man that was there. Now, of
Yeah,
course, he doesn't know if that was Putin or not, but
right.
something about that accent, I think, is what made
Mhm.
him in his adult life later in years associate it with, have that
Right.
memory association with Putin, and allegedly, don't quote me, but I feel like that was something along those lines.
Yeah, I think so too. So yeah, I mean, there are the bottom line is there are very powerful people,
Yeah,
globally powerful people involved in these things. And so, even you and I talking about this could put you and I in danger.
yeah,
And all we're doing is talking about something that's out on the internet,
yep,
but we're raising awareness of it.
yeah. I
But
know it's crazy. I
yeah,
mean, people are. I mean, it's not a free country anymore.
Oh no, no, we passed that exit a long time ago.
Yeah, yeah. And when I hear people say, well, it's a free country, I'm like,
No,
only if we're saying what you want us to say, which is not free.
not free.
I mean the was it a journalist that called Trump a pedophile protector and he got fired?
Yes,
But then they raised, I guess they did a GoFundMe and people are donating, to it. And
yeah.
but I mean, but it's not a free country anymore, you
No, it's
know?
not. Not when they're ripping people out of cars. There's no due process. When you lose due process, you
Yeah,
have lost your freedom.
yeah,
When your door can be broken down, when the president of the United States tells his hired Gestapo on the streets to be as violent as possible, he said those words 2 days ago. He
yeah,
told them, "I want you to be as violent as you can
yeah,
with citizens." He doesn't care who it is. We are living in 1930s Germany.
yeah.
That's exactly what's happening.
I mean, I've had the thought, and I know this may be a little dramatic, but I think that when you go through a certain kind of trauma, you always
Mhm.
go to like that. I'm able to
Yeah,
talk myself down, but I think you always go to like these worst case scenarios when my worst case scenario was someone thought they murdered me,
right,
and so
right.
it's easy for me to sometimes go back to that because
Of
I've lived
course.
it, right?
Yeah,
And I just keep thinking how I will not shut up, and
right.
that this could very well be my demise, the fact that I am so loud, because I don't see it getting better anytime soon.
No, and I think we have to those of us who have the heart and the stomach for it, we have to be loud to raise awareness so that other people have the courage to be loud as well and to stand up. And I just I think it's come to a point where if you live in a castle doctrine state, find out if your state has such a thing as castle doctrine. I know my state does. Then it behooves you to be armed and to be prepared to protect your home
Yeah.
and know what that castle doctrine law says. Don't just assume that somebody steps on your driveway, you have a right to take them out. That's not what it says.
I
Make
think
sure
here
you
in Tennessee, they
follow.
have to physically be inside your home.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what castle doctrine is. Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And you have to be reasonably afraid that your
Mm,
life is in danger. Um, but I've always said, like my daddy used to say, nothing makes somebody stop and think more than the sound of cold steel on steel on the other side of the door.
yeah. Have you seen the new TikTok trend where people are showing that the angle is it called angle trend or something?
No, 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 wait, I guess I haven't seen that.
Okay, so people are making these videos of where they can hide in their room or in their home and have access to see their door to start shooting at ICE when they come in before ICE ever even knows where they are.
That's a good idea. Yeah, you have
Yeah.
to think about these things. Where am I going to position myself so
Uh-huh.
when they bust in, they're not going to be looking right at me. Hmm.
Yeah. And so they're all saying, I can have two or three of them taken down before they even know where the bullets are coming from. And they're even saying how like the past few days, and I haven't fact checked this, but they're saying the past few days they've had more ICE agents quit than ever, because people are going to start fighting back.
They're just a tiny bit unpopular.
Yeah.
And I think that they all need to think about that. And what they didn't understand, what many of these people are, uh, there's a good number of them that are illiterate.
Yeah.
So they were asked to sign a contract they couldn't read. And those contracts, they were told, oh, we're going to give you a $50,000 bonus. You're going to get, you're going to make 160 grand a year, blah, blah, blah. And then they find out, oh, by the way, if you quit before 5 years, you have to pay that bonus back. Well, you
And
don't
isn't
you don't get it for 5 years and you have to pay back, a certain amount of money,
yeah.
right?
Well, and I thought I saw something, and again, not fact checked, but I thought I saw something where when you sign on, you only get like $10,000 of that 50 grand. And
Right.
then I guess each year you get some. And then if you
If you quit
don't
before
make it to
five
the
years, you
five
got to pay it
years,
all
you
back.
got to pay it all back.
Well,
And
and
they
that's
think that
the
they're just going to get a $50,000 check right before Christmas, you know?
right. And that's people don't understand. That's the way sign-on bonuses work across the board. So I've worked for corporations where I was given a sign-on bonus to, sign a contract with them that might have been 3 years. If I quit before that 3 years is up, I got to pay back they prorate it, so
Well, and
whatever
a
is
lot of companies
prorated left.
that help out with college tuition.
Yeah,
Like that they'll pay a percentage or your college tuition in some form.
right.
Um, and then but it needs to be a job that you can, advance with the company with. And then if you end up leaving, you owe them the money for the college tuition. I
Yeah,
think where I was at, it was either you have to work there like 2 or 3 years after
right.
for to not have to pay back that tuition.
Yes. Yeah. 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 I made a TikTok about this recently. To for those who are trying to understand who these people are that are signing up for ICE. I mean, there's a variety, obviously, of people who sign up for it. I use the analogy of the Vietnam vets that I treated after they came back years ago, and we had a little joke amongst the psychiatrists in the VA mental health clinic that if you see a LRP on your schedule, which is long range reconnaissance personnel, those were the Rangers. You need to like have a doctor's appointment or something you got to go to. You don't want to see that person.
Oh, wow.
Now, that's not true of all of them.
Sure.
The majority of people that went to Vietnam were drafted. They didn't have a choice. But there were those who, as I'm going way back, I'm aging myself, as Woody Guthrie wrote about, no, Arlo Guthrie wrote about in his song Alice's Restaurant, the group W bench, the father rapers and the guys that want veins in their teeth.
Right.
So there were those who signed up and they wanted to go into the long range reconnaissance patrols because that's where you get to do really atrocious things that your government is not gonna, we don't care if you're committing a war crime, go do it because nobody's gonna know you're there anyway.
Yeah.
Like when we weren't in Cambodia, supposedly we weren't in Cambodia, we were in Cambodia, and that was those guys, and they were killing entire families. So some of them signed up because they wanted to do that. And that's the same is true with these ice guys. Some of them, though, are imagine you're someone who maybe you got a bit of a criminal record and you're working at a shitty job and you hear about this opportunity to get a $50,000 bonus and you could make 160, that's the way they advertise it, right? 160 a
Hmm.
year. Not true. And you tend to have some sort of evil proclivities anyway. You kind of like beating people up, you kind of like power and control, and you thought about joining law enforcement, but you couldn't pass the background check. And then you hear that the Department of Homeland Security is hiring people so fast that their HR department can't do any meaningful background check anyway. And so you go join ICE because you get to do what you want to do to
Yeah.
people and get paid for it.
Yeah. And even if there are some that don't want to do all the ugly bad things, which would be few and far between, it seems,
The
the money alone,
money alone. Yep.
which is another Trump lie, but these people think they're going to be
Right.
making $160,000 a year versus the $15 an hour job they have right now, if they're lucky
Right.
at $15 an hour.
Right. Yes.
And people think that, all right, I'm gonna go and they're gonna write me a check for $50,000 and I want to make another 160,000
Mhm.
that year. So that's
Mhm.
$210,000 I'm
Right.
making this year. If I have
Yeah.
to do some bad things, I'll do some bad
Yeah.
things.
And racism is still very prominent in
Oh
this
yeah.
country. And so I've been going back a lot to that quote by Lyndon B. Johnson. If you tell the lowest white man that he's better than the best black man, he won't notice that you're picking his pockets. Hell, give him somebody to look down on, and he'll empty his pockets for you. That's become, I mean, if you notice how many brown and black people are members of ICE, it's become just tell the lowest man of any color that he's better than the best man of any color. And not only will he empty his pockets, but he'll pick up arms and do whatever the hell you want him to do.
Yeah. I did see where several hundred, if not more, of ICE employees have now been doxxed.
Yeah, some of their kids are doxing them. Their Gen Z kids are putting it out on the internet. Hey, my dad is such and such, and he's an ICE agent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's illegal, but what they're doing on the streets is illegal.
I know. And I think it puts like I'm so equally as frustrated with Democrats. I don't know
Yeah,
if I should say I'm very frustrated and mad at Democrats
yeah,
because it's like the minute I think that we're getting a little bit that they vote again another way and set
right,
us completely, and I'm just like, what the fuck? What's
right,
happening?
right.
When you see that post, that's saying that there are friends and family that I love that I would not tell where Anne Frank is hiding. Like
Hmm.
that shit hits hard,
It sure does. It sure does.
and
Listen, there are people in my community. I call them friends now, but this family that are immigrants. And I've told them, I mean, they don't live in my part of town, you know what I'm saying? But I've told them, if you notice this stuff going on in your part of town and you can get out, you come here immediately
yeah,
and you'll just be here.
yeah,
Like, yeah, I have places you can hide.
yeah, same.
Yeah,
Same. There's a few people in my life that I've made sure that I've had some kind of game plan with.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. So there's a lot of, I guess I want to just kind of wrap things up with saying, if
Yeah,
we're ready to wrap things up, with saying that one can easily get psychologically, emotionally overwhelmed with everything that we're seeing in real time happening, and then that we're hearing has happened to people like Sasha Riley and the Epstein victims. And I want people to, even though we're out here, spreading the word, I straddle the fence between, yes, you have to stay informed, but you have to protect your mental health as well. And there is absolutely a necessity for you to take time in every day and make sure it's not just 5 minutes. Make sure it's a significant amount of time in the day to get away from all of that and to do something that calms your nervous system, and to petting your cat or your dog, or taking a walk in the park, spending some time with your nieces and nephews, your kids, whatever it is, your grandkids. Do something that soothes you, that brings you joy, and focus on that. And the only way we're going to create a better world is if we focus on a better world.
yeah,
We can't create a better world by focusing on all the ugliness. Yes, we have to be aware of it, but I mean, it's only in understanding the contrast of what we don't want that we can see what we do want, right? So we have to focus on what we do want. What do you want to bring into the world? How can you make that small difference in that day? Is there a homeless man on the corner that you can go and buy a meal for? Is there some kindness that you can lend to the world today? And can you sit down and meditate and visualize the world you want to live in, and imagine and feel the emotion of love. Feel the emotion. I'm not talking about don't focus on somebody you love, but focus on the emotion of love for the world, for humanity. Can you spend 15, 20 minutes a day doing that? Because when you do that, when you focus on what you want, that's how you bring it about.
Oh, I think that's a beautiful note to end on.